Hello, Asia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for holding space with me today, Tim. This is going to be such an exciting topic. I'm so pumped.
For everyone listening, Asia is an author, advocate, and entrepreneur. And to our Couply audience, you'll also see her work in our LDR courses as she successfully navigated a 1.5-year long distance relationship. She is an advocate and online authority for women educating the internet around vaginismus and vulvodynia, specializing in sexual technology, education, and fitness. She's also a fellow ENFP. Asia, welcome to the Coupley Relationship Advice Podcast.
I love that. I feel like that was a walking down a red carpet moment, and I felt the drum roll within your speech. I just feel like, wow, is that me? So humble, so humble.
It's great to have you on. I know we've spoken about this for a while and we've connected both online, in person, but now we are finally recording one of our conversations. Like any of our conversations could have been a podcast over the years, honestly.
They honestly should have been. I feel the best conversations come from casual interactions with your friends, and then you get that spark of insight, whether it's a business idea or something you
Yeah.
want to try it yourself. So I'm glad we're recording this one.
How did you get involved in this space? And give us a little bit of a story of your life up until now and getting into this area that you're in.
That's such a good question. And whenever anybody asks me my life story, I'm someone that's very big on self-awareness and inner child
Mm,
healing. So I'll go back to the earliest memories that I feel best helped me get to where I am today. Growing up, I was in predominantly a white dominant space. And as
mm,
a woman of color, I felt I had to look a certain way or be a certain way to be accepted, and specifically within the male gaze, because I feel many folk that identify as a woman or femme in relationships that they have to put others' needs first, whether it's a nurturing aspect of being a mother or within a relationship where you put your partner's desires and wants first before your own so you can be more of a caregiver. And with that subconscious thinking, I measured my self worth to being enough for my partner, being pretty enough, being attractive enough. And I never once considered, was this the way I really wanted to measure my self worth? And growing up, I specifically put feeling attractive enough and sex as a category of, if I sleep with X amount of people, I'll be worthy, or that'll make me feel good about myself. It was focusing on external validation all throughout high school, and specifically when I started college was when I had my first partner. Now you can imagine with those limiting beliefs and subconscious thinking that in that relationship, I always put my partner's needs first. And specifically, I noticed that in the bedroom. And once we wanted to get intimate, specifically with penetrative sex, we came across a roadblock where I couldn't participate. Nothing was going in. I was nervous at the time. And when nothing went in, they were naturally affected by their ego. And me being the caregiver and empath, I didn't even think twice of how I was feeling in the situation. And was that even consensual? Was that something I really wanted to do? Or did I want to do that because they wanted to? And I spent a couple of weeks and months confused with, does everyone have this problem with penetrative sex, or is there something wrong with me? And because that's such a taboo topic, specifically in college or university, that everyone glorifies what it's supposed to be or how many people you sleep with, I never felt safe or comfortable speaking up on it. Then I visited the general doctor on my campus to see, okay, maybe there is something wrong with me. And naturally, she just prescribed lube, which we're not even taught in sex education to use lube. So I thought perhaps that's the holy grail to amazing penetrative sex. Down the line, though, I quickly realized lube was not the case, and I got diagnosed with vaginismus and vulvodynia. So those are two different conditions that are very miseducated, and a lot of folk are ashamed of it due to the symptoms of the condition. So vaginismus is when the pelvic floor muscles are involuntarily contracting. So they're contracting without your control. as in when you use the bathroom, for example, your muscles are contracting. When you laugh really hard and you feel it in your abs, they're contracting. When you're in the gym and you're tightening your core, they're contracting. But unfortunately, with this condition, when you have sex, the muscles as well are tightening and they're contracting, which doesn't allow an object, a dildo, a penis, anything to enter, even a tampon. And vulvodynia is pain within the vulva region. So a lot of people don't even know what a vulva is to begin with. They always get confused with what a vagina is and a vulva. But the vulva will include the labia, the clitoris, specifically also the vaginal opening. And in that case, that's where the chronic pain lied. So you can imagine me, 19-year-old, fresh into college, and I'm like, I have a condition where I can't have what the world seems to be sex, aka solely vaginal, penis, intercourse, sex. And due to my upbringing of wanting to please my partner, wanting to be of service to others through only physical things, and feeling attractive enough if I can sleep with certain people, this became an issue. And that allowed me to really dig in how I had been measuring my self worth even at a young age. Fast forward to now, with a lot of help with therapy and a lot of journaling, which is why I find finding a safe creative outlet to work on that subconscious mind and work on that thought process that you internalize and may end up seeing as your truth, as your values, as your belief system. Journaling is a great way to process that. And that's allowed me to now not be ashamed of my condition anymore and actually help folk educate themselves on it, whether they're an ally who happen to be sleeping with people who can't have penetrative sex, or folk who do experience painful sex, and learning to
Hmm.
not normalize that. And unfortunately, it's common due to the miseducation in the sex education system, just in normal intimate settings with people you're with, whether it's casually or romantically. And now I'm in a time where I'm using TikTok and Instagram to be open about this discussion. And so far, it's already helped thousands of folk with vulvas be honest with themselves and talk about it with their partners and learn to seek help rather than to suffer in silence with these conditions and normalize it.
Asia's, you've been so amazingly open in this, and I think, it's important to acknowledge, like, especially when you're talking to me, you're opening up also to a guy, and I recognize that there's a lot of stuff attached to that. So I just want to call out and recognize your courage there. This is not like an easy thing to talk about, especially even with a member of the opposite sex. So appreciate that, and I hope everyone listening thinks so as well. And this is why I was really excited to have this conversation with you, because you've done so much in spreading so much awareness and advocacy around this issue. And this isn't something that just affects like a tiny percentage of people. The actual percentage of people that are affected by this is actually pretty large.
I remember reading a stat where people experience painful sex, and this is solely just penetrative. So you can imagine folk that have pain regions that are outside the vaginal region or outside of any type of intercourse. 75% is a big number in the
Mm.
population, and that is specifically for women. That excludes folk who are non binary, who are transgender, two spirit as well. So you can imagine there's a lot of people in shame about it because no one wants to talk about it.
And I think for vaginismus, was it like 25% or it was like,
Yes, and there had been a couple discussions where that number may not even be accurate because there could be a load of people that would go to a professional but get a misdiagnosis or be
right.
dismissed, and they wouldn't even be included within that number. So it is unfortunately so common and normalized.
And it's not something that people are talking about. And this is why I think, again, we're having this conversation to spread it not only beyond your audience, but into the coupley audience as well. So the men and women listening to this, if you're talking to your fellow guys, you're talking to your female friends, like this is something that needs to be part of the conversation. We saw it even just like in a Reddit post, just yesterday was someone saying, "Oh, there's definitely something wrong. This is what's happening when I try and have sex with my girlfriend. We can't." And people just don't know about this. It's 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 why it's why it's so important that we do talk about this.
I
And
agree.
so, yeah, go on,
Go
Aisha.
ahead. I was gonna say I feel it's also so linked to mental health. Like it's not even just bedroom talk, but in the way
Mm.
you engage with others. I feel being able to talk about this or at least better understand your body can help you find different fitness activities that work best for your body. It can also help with your mental health. And for example, some people feel they can't even be in a relationship because they feel they can't give penetrative sex. So why would they feel worthy enough to be with a partner? Why would they feel lovable enough? So it really hits more of even an emotional
Mm.
symptom, not just physical. So I agree that it does impact both partners as well, not even just the one person that has the condition.
So, what can people start to do? And this is where your work has really shined. Let's start getting into the things that people can do. We know that this is very widespread. There's going to be multiple people listening to this podcast right now who either have this uh, or has a partner that has this. So let's get into solutions and what is the work that you've done, encouraged others to do.
And I feel this is really the bread and the butter of it all. So, what do you do? Because I find a lot of people come up to me and they think, oh, I may have this. What are my next steps? And the
Mm.
first thing I always like to recommend is go to a medical professional, as easy as it sounds. However, specifically a pelvic floor therapist or a gynecologist. I feel a lot of the time we go straight to our general doctors, which is a natural habit based on how the health system is set up for most of us. However, there had been a lot of experiences for people that do have painful sex with their partner, with multiple partners, and their general doctor may not be aware of the condition, which comes back to, again, the education system of the health professionals. So that's why I mentioned going to a gynecologist or pelvic floor therapist first, because they are more aware and educated on the condition and of treatment options. Because that would, for me, I wish I knew, because it would have saved me a lot more time where I spent in general doctors' offices having either one, misdiagnoses, two, being gaslit for my experience and being told, have a bit of wine or just add more lube.
All right.
And three, overall, you could be receiving the help, but not the emotional support that you need. It's not just, which by the way, this happened to me, being written on a piece of paper, ripped off, and be given a old-fashioned pamphlet of just look up the condition yourself. This is what you have, and I'll see you later. Right? Really deserves a lot of attention and care to the patient when delivering this message, as well as giving the next steps. So I do recommend seeing a professional that is actually specialized in this condition, and they will give you a treatment that works best for you because this both conditions are absolutely recoverable. I think that's the one misguided conception of the condition is that they are treatable. It's just that it's a trial and error process, and you have to figure out what works for you because what may be good for your condition may not be for someone else.
Hmm. So first step, go to a pelvic floor therapist, gynecologist,
Mhm.
and then what's next?
Once you go to a professional, they're going to give you a variety of different treatment options. So for me, I was given medical management first. So that was a steroid cream to help numb the pain of the region. And two, later on, you can be given nerve blockers, also known as antidepressants, to help minimize the pain. And then you start off at a very slow dose, and then if you feel you don't see any changes, you may go up in size. Now, again, this was given to me by my gynecologist when I first started. Other people may receive different treatment when they first start. It really just depends who you're going to, which is why it's so important to look at finding the right gynecologist and pelvic floor
Hmm.
therapist. It's kind of like a psychologist. Sometimes the first one you come across may not be it. So it's going to take a couple tries until you find the right fit. And one sign I would advise anyone to look out for is someone that validates your experiences, both emotionally, mentally, and physically. Because there's a lot of professionals out there that know the condition, but they have no emotional intelligence and can hold no compassion for their patients. So it's important you acknowledge where they're at and if they can meet you at that level before even engaging with further treatment or advice. And once they give you the treatment, something that I'm really proud of in the healthcare community, specifically from patient led experiences, is knowing how to be assertive as a patient. Because often we say yes to whatever the gynecologist is going to give us, to the doctor. As long as it can save my relationship, I'll take it. That's something I've heard so many times.
Hmm.
However, the one person that knows your body best is you. So for me, that's what happened. I took the medical management route, and as I was taking the medication, it just felt like I was more reliant and I wasn't seeing the results I wanted. And intuitively, I felt there was another way, which is why I took the holistic route and ended up using dilators. Now,
Hmm.
for a quick disclosure of what dilators are, think of a plastic, sometimes silicone, preferably for more comfort, silicone pipe. That doesn't sound as, I know it sounds a bit scary, and there's a lot of flaws within the dilator industry in itself, but you would slowly be able to insert them at a tiny size and then increase them as you go. So the whole goal is to associate calmness and allow your body to understand it's safe when you're inserting something. So this is where the pelvic floor therapist would come in and help guide you in how your pelvic floor works, what's happening as you're inserting the dilator, breathing techniques, diaphragmic breathing, as well as integrating mindfulness, body scans. Some people do biofeedback as well. There are holistic approaches to help manage the pain as well as be able to experience penetrative insertion safely and comfortably and have fun doing it. So, at the end of the day, when being given the treatment, it's up to you to decide and know that you have the power and the autonomy and the control to select which treatment is best for you. Just make sure you're working with someone where it's a collaboration, not an authority figure telling you what to do.
You also speak a lot about um, how people can include their partners in this journey through conscious
Yes,
curiosity. I'd love to hear more about this.
absolutely. So, I feel we live in a world where everyone thinks, especially within the coaching industry, if I do XYZ based on the template they've given me, I'm going to get this result. If I try this sex approach in bed, we're going to have better orgasms. And I feel we're in a society where instant gratification makes us want to take the quick route, makes us want to just follow exactly what the internet told me to do, or this guru or social media or this video I saw do, and I'm going to give it a go. When in reality, when it comes to sex, our bodies, we have to learn how to take a step back and ask, okay, this is what worked for them, but is that going to work for me? So, why I want to bring up conscious curiosity is because, regardless of your condition, of your body, it's important to realize don't get so focused on the end result. Try to enjoy the process. Try to find things that do work for you. So, at the moment, we may not be able to do penetrative sex. Okay, so what other options can we do? We don't have to pin ourselves in the box and say, for me to satisfy my partner, we need to have something that's penetrative. There's other ways to explore, and once you open your mind and lean into that curiosity instead of have the expectation like in order to penetrate equals an orgasm, really take a step back and think, okay, how can I get creative with this? How can I lean into my curiosity? And a lot of it has to do with communicating with your partner and with yourself and knowing how to navigate those conversations and then communicate in a way where both people feel heard and seen.
And it's like a microcosm of what should be a very powerful skill for anyone's relationship. And like, of course, we're talking about a very like specific issue here, but you could take this issue and you could take it across to to a chronic pain condition, to like a psychological condition, to anything that is a condition that is impacting both partners or really just impacting one partner. It's the way that you talk about it together and the way that you approach it as a team together. And I really love this conscious curiosity sort of model that you have because I think it's a really powerful one in relationships. And we can apply this like to solving more relationship problems as well, you know?
Yeah, like I see it as a muscle because I think a lot of the time when we get even it's very layman's terms talking, but when we have an expectation for something and
Mm.
it doesn't work out, and then we huff and we puff and we try the same method again, and Conscious curiosity is just kind of another way of saying resilience. It's this idea that you're going to take a step back and think, okay, so this isn't working for me. Instead of getting stuck on it and defining myself based on the end result, let's pivot and see what else works. And that takes time. And a lot of this can even lean into aftercare sex, which I think isn't talked about enough and is a way you can exercise that conscious curiosity. The idea that after your intimate time is complete in the bedroom, having the courage to say, okay, how did you enjoy that? Was there something I could do differently? Was there something that you prefer or you want me to continue doing going forward? And that part's scary. Like a lot of the time, people don't even want to look each other in the eye when we're talking about that, right? Like you could be in the
Yeah,
shower afterwards, you could both be looking at the wall, but at least you're practicing that muscle of I'm
yeah.
going to speak my truth in a way where no one is going to be defensive or hostile, but we're going to be curious. How did that really go? Let's talk about it. And that over time will develop what sex looks like to you, whether it is solely just outer course. Maybe it's a bit of intercourse with what you're comfortable with. Really get comfortable with those aftercare sex talks because naturally that will lean into how you show up for yourself in network settings, in ways where you meet people. Like, I find if you can practice having those hard conversations while being assertive and honoring how you feel about a situation, that can lean into how you show up and socialize with others. So it's not
Mm.
just a bedroom thing. This can go beyond it. Everything is so connected when it comes to honoring your truth and leaning into that conscious curiosity.
I think that's about a lot of that is around this idea of checking in on all aspects of your relationship actually. Like of course, like sex and intimacy is one, and especially in this case, right, where you're working on something together, but it it's almost equally as important to do this on your communication, on your stress levels, on how you're feeling in life overall, on how cherished you feel by your partner as well. Like there's a lot of different elements. I mean, we built this. I'm very passionate about this because we built this feature in Couply, as you know. So for those listening this, like as you guys know, you on your homepage in Couply, you can do your check-in where you score each individual part of your relationship and you can leave a note being like, here's how I'm feeling about our communication. Here are my stress levels. Here's how productive I've been. Because guess what? Sometimes your productivity is going to be a 10, your stress is going to be a 10, your intimacy is going to be at a 0, and that is completely okay. Like every relationships go through different ups and downs on all of these different things that we're doing. But as long as your communication's high and you're talking about things and you're sharing things with your partner, you will be okay. And there's also going to be times when your communication is crap as well because your stress is high and you're not able to communicate in your best way. But just saying like, hey, I want to recognize that my communication hasn't been great this week, um, is quite a powerful thing.
I agree. I feel relationships are like seasons, and everyone thinks it should just be like summer, hot,
Mm,
exciting. You're trying new things, everything's electrifying. But in reality,
yeah.
what happens after summer? Comes fall, people start to slow down, life gets busy, people start to shift gears, and sometimes you feel the relationship is going a bit slower. Maybe there isn't as much growth you saw. Maybe you're not learning as much about the person as you were maybe a few months ago, a few years ago. But the way I look at it is kind of like an elastic band that over time it'll stretch and there'll be maybe some tension. But if you can
Mm,
work it out, eventually the elastic band will come back down and then you're in winter, right? You're like both kind of heads down. You both understand where you're at. You have other priorities outside the relationship, but it doesn't mean the relationship's important. It could be for a career reason, it could be a family reason. Someone needs to take a step back. It's communicating the shift in seasons, the shift in priorities, and then eventually, as relationships go like a cycle, spring season comes and things start to get more exciting. Suddenly you have more time. It's being patient with the seasons of a relationship and communicating where you're both at. So I love what you said, being able to check in with your partner and not have it be so robotic and forced, but rather you're being curious. Like, how are you doing? This is how I'm feeling right now. Leaning into that instead of thinking I have to.
mm. I love that. And I know it's been a while now, but I do want to talk about your experience in an LDR as well. A long
Yeah.
distance relationship for people who aren't aware. Asia helped us out. She has some long distance date ideas that will come to you in Couply if you're in a LDR. And you're in an LDR for a really long time. We spoke a few times throughout this period, but it was like a year and a half, I believe,
Yeah.
due to lockdowns and pandemics. I'd love for you to, if you can, rewind your mind back to that and uh, and talk a little about some of the things that you did.
Absolutely. I actually love this topic because I feel being in a long distance relationship teaches you way more that a lot of people won't ever get to experience just because it's such a unique, most of the time, non purposeful choice, specifically for our situation with my partner. And yes, for context, we did not see each other for a year and a half due to the borders of the pandemic. So he was in Ireland and Spain, and I was in Canada. So countries that had very different approaches to the pandemic and how to go about it. So that was already something to navigate. And I love how you bring that up, Tim, because it really plays again to applying that conscious curiosity. So realizing we have a situation at hand that there are things that we can't do. For example, physical touch used to be our number one love language. And then over time, it really shifted where we couldn't do that anymore. We couldn't give each other a hug. We couldn't cuddle. We couldn't even do a handshake. We had to use what we had, thankfully for technology, and be aware and communicate the shift in love language. Because I feel for the first few months, I felt that distance with him, naturally, as most couples would in long distance. And instead of just admitting that this was what it had to be, we actually had a discussion on our love languages and asking ourselves, okay, what other way can we feel loved in this based on the situation? And we really found quality time stepped up to number one due to the situation, but also it was what worked best. As much as we loved a good I love you morning text for words of affirmation or surprise, there's flowers at your door gift giving, it really was the quality time. And again, that's us being curious of how can we sort this out. And we began to get creative. So again, that's why I always suggest people to go online and get curious and look up ideas of what others do long distance date ideas. I know for us, we did a mocktail, well, not mocktail, it was alcoholic, a cocktail DIY where I made his and he made mine over FaceTime. Or we did even painting each other over wine and a charcuterie board, or even playing like the Mad Libs games, or like fun little games you'd play just over the screen to create that sense of quality time. And what's great is that we shifted from, oh, like, how's your day been, to let's do an activity together. And that was again because we went back to revisiting those love languages, which by the way, Coupley has an amazing quiz for, and that's what we did actually, to kind of identify what worked for us. And since then, we were able to focus on what worked for us rather than just putting up with the situation and keeping every single conversation the same.
The idea, the dream is if you can still grow together despite being apart, that's the goal
Mm.
for an LDR. And what's what makes an LDR very difficult is if there's no set time where you're going to see each other. If you have no plan. I've spoken to some of our users and they're like, yeah, my relationship's very difficult. I'm in a long distance relationship. Okay, cool. Do you have a long-term plan of seeing each other? And they're like, well, we've never met. I was like, oh boy, oh, this is gonna be tricky. It's like we never met. We're in LDR. We don't have any plans to see each other. I was like, that is going to be a very difficult relationship to
Yeah.
like last. It can work, but you need some plan eventually to close the distance, which actually brings us to your location at the moment, because you're no longer in Canada, are you?
No, we closed that gap. All that hard work of schedule, like you said, scheduling, and sometimes even in my Google Meet calendar. Like, okay, Sundays afternoons are for
Mm.
my partner. All that conscious curiosity, leaning into how can we make our quality time over FaceTime better, really paid off because now we live together in Spain. Thanks to the pandemic, I got my visa, and we've now been able to live together. And I will say, as hard as it's saying now, I'm sure I'd like punch myself in the side for saying, "Oh, if I could take it back and like not do long distance, like, are you crazy?" But I will say it really has grown our relationship and has made our connection deeper, more meaningful, and we better understand each other, especially when situations where we can't see each other for some reason for a while. It's no problem because we know how each other works, especially when it comes to being interdependent. I feel that's been the most beautiful blessing in disguise with long distance. It really teaches you how to love your alone time. And it teaches you how to be your own person outside of your partner, which, if anything, I think adds to the relationship because now you can bring new things into the relationship that your partner may not know about because you went off and learned this new hobby and you're so excited to share it with them. So at the end of the day, I'm very grateful for the lessons and the hard work that went into it. And if there's anyone listening out there that's in the similar situation, just know it is worth it and it is a team effort. But if you both can, like you said, lean into being communicative as well as still growing and being creative with how you see each other on FaceTime call, or even I know you have the new feature with the videos. Like that was a
Mm.
huge aspect for us, was instead of just texting, even adding Snapchats. With your video feature, I find a message means more when you engage more than just one of the five senses. Like rather than just reading a text from them, it means so much more if you hear a voice memo from them. It means
Hmm.
even way more if you see their face and a voice memo from them, right? And 10 times more when there's actually a video chat. So I absolutely am very grateful for this. And thanks, Tim, as well for letting me talk about that because it has been a while.
It's a really powerful problem to help solve. It's a really big problem, and I think you're right. And I love that you've taken the positives out of it. And I love as well that it seems like, and I think in our previous conversations, you've said on the attachment style, you're more on like the anxious attachment style,
Yes.
like would normally be. But it seems like this proof that you and your partner have managed to work through some really hard things has moved you much more from anxious to secure. And the goal for everyone listening, yes, you can do the coupley attachment style quiz, learn your attachment style, but the goal is not to just be like, I'm an avoider, that's me, and then identify with that, or I'm anxious, that's me. The goal is to move, each of you move towards a secure relationship. And it seems like with all of this evidence, with all of the work you guys have done, like this intradependence, I think you were calling it, this ability to go off and do your own things and explore as an individual,
Mhm.
that is a very strong indicator of a someone who's maybe moved from more of anxious attachment style into more of a secure attachment style.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I love revisiting back to the attachment styles. And that was one of the first few tests we actually did alongside the love language test when we first started in long distance. Because as you know, with long distance, you're probably more comfortable with your thoughts and keeping them to yourself because it's easier to because you don't have to confront them physically rather than telling your partner how you feel. And I think that's where a lot of long distance couples go wrong is that they keep it in themselves. They don't share how they feel because either one, they don't think it's quote unquote relevant because they're not seeing each other, or two, they're afraid they're going to hurt the other person's feelings and they're going to lose them, which brings that scarcity mindset into the long distance relationship, which is very hard to manage for a long term. And something that really resonated and helped me take a step back and process and watch my anxious thoughts was the compassion focused therapy that I
Mm.
started to do when I started doing therapy actually long distance. So when I did long distance, thankfully I had the financial means to go to therapy, and I actually highly recommend anybody to go and have someone they can talk to outside the relationship to help process their thoughts because it's so easy to ruminate when your partner's not there physically with you and you can talk about it. So with the compassion focused therapy, I personally find it helpful because I'm an overthinker. And especially when your partner's living in some other different country, it's easy to take small things that you see either on social media or that they say and then magnify into something like a narrative that is very false. And then suddenly you start getting defensive and hostile about things that may not even be a true narrative at all. And it was just something that was in your head that you manifested. So, something that's helped me is with a compassion focused therapy. It's this idea that your brain has three different types of regulation systems. So, you have your threat system, this is your survival mode. It's any angry thought like, oh, he doesn't like me anymore, or I'm so mad at him. I can't believe he did that. Or I can't believe she said this on the call. Does she really mean that? Then you have the drive brain, which is the accomplishment side. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so glad like we did that call together, or we need to continue growing our relationship. And then the last one is the soothing and nurturing brain. So this is the type of thought that goes, I am calm, I am safe, I am cared for, and I'm nurtured. So I can bet you that any thought that just comes through your brain unfiltered can land in one of these few categories. So, especially when it comes to something that they did or something that I said, you may get triggered and a thought may come up, but it might not be your truth. However, some people can just take that thought like, oh, is it that girl that he's talking about? Like, I think I heard her like a few FaceTime calls ago. Like, is she someone I should be worried about? Before you even respond to that or react to it, ask yourself, okay, where is that thought in the three regulation systems? In my three brains, where does that fall into? And that allows you to take a step back before saying something you may regret. Because it's easy to take that thought and then manifest it into something big, whereas that taking that step back gives you a second to breathe. And also remind yourself your thoughts are not facts. I think that's like the
Yeah.
biggest thing in long distance relationships. So once you categorize it, then you can kind of go, okay, wait, is this really my truth? Is this actually how I feel about what they just said? Or is this just my subconscious thinking, taking something and running with it? And this is a great exercise to do if you ever do journaling or you're dumping your thoughts down. Really categorize what you're writing down and think, okay, has my brain lately been on threat and survival mode when I talk to my partner about XYZ person or event? Or you use it as a way to see how you're doing so far. Like, is everything I've been thinking about my partner more from the calm side of my brain? Do I still feel safe with them? Or am I feeling a bit hostile? Have you ever heard of this actually type of therapy before, Tim?
Only through you. And I really love this, and I really love the active application of it in terms of like taking it in and dividing your thoughts in that manner, because then there's a second mental model in which like once you have a thought, you're
Mm-hmm.
then going to look for evidence to support it, right?
Yes.
Because if
Confirm bias.
you're exactly, you're consciously searching for confirmation bias. And then that very quickly in relationships can lead to a game of let's find the bad guy. So then
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly looking for to bring things into this confirmation bias, which is all of thought, which might not, as Asia has very eloquently said, your thought might not be a fact. And then you're looking for anything you can do to support it. And now that you're blowing it up, you're going to bring it in as a fully manifested fact into your relationship and throw that across as a bomb into your partner's world and see what happens with it. The other thing you said as well was around like triggering can happen from social media. Now, what we see now, and I've heard this from multiple people where we've done user interviews on Couply, is they're like, oh, yeah, the thing wasn't something that my partner did. It was a video that I saw on TikTok that sparked the insecurity inside me. Because when I saw this video, it was about their partner doing this, and my partner sometimes do that. Therefore, it must be the same thing.
I have seen a load of that where, especially, everyone thinks that TikTok is therapy advice, when in reality, we should all be taking it with a grain of salt. And funny enough, I think you could even spin that around and scroll through, let's say, if someone related to what you just said, Tim. What I would do is scroll through TikTok and actually write down or just make a mental note of the first 20 videos you see. And then I want
Mm,
you to create a story of what the TikTok algorithm thinks you are. Because that's its job. Its job is to get into
yeah.
your brain, figure out what you like, what catches your attention, which naturally would be probably fear mongering rather than enjoyment, because that's how the algorithm works. And then three, ask yourself, are you okay consuming these types of things? Is this the narrative that you want to project in your relationships and your friendships, how you show up with yourself? It's like the saying that people say, the same people say, the saying that goes, you are the reflection of the closest five people in your circle. Now try to apply that with your social media. Which types of videos do you most see? And are they projections, whether they be positive or negative, of yourself? And the great thing about that, though, is if you can identify that, let's say those types of, oh, red flag, he has to be cheating type of videos, are those the type of, is that the type of content you want to surround yourself with? And if not, you can actually change it quite easily, which is nice on the algorithm, is first off, you start blocking or giving that little TikTok notice that
Uninterested.
you don't like this
Hmm.
content, uninterested, and start to actively, and it's going to take some time because you might have to search it yourself, more videos of what you want your relationship to look like. Whether it's like ideas for long distance couples or it's ways to build intimacy with your partner. A lot of amazing therapists on TikTok share couple advice about this. Do a massive spam of liking that type of content, and the algorithm, the For You page, will shift for you. But the biggest step, like you said, Tim, is to be aware and ask yourself, these are the videos that's coming to me. This is the way I'm processing those thoughts based on what the TikTok has said. Is this how I really want to start thinking about my relationship? Or is this just a type of fear mongering tactic from the algorithm?
And we see this even with advertising messages, with obviously the videos that you see on social media, but also within the news as well. Within mainstream media, you're going to see things that mostly will be presenting the threat side. And the reason for that is because people are more likely to consume content that might um, push away a threat than they are to the than they are to consume content for something that is more likely going to give them a gain, which would be on the drive side, or make them feel calm, safe, and nurtured, right? We're just hardwired to do that. And therefore, the videos that go the most viral, the videos that you're most likely to see, are these threat-based videos, which are constantly seeping into your unconscious, triggering your threat state of mind, which makes you feel less good about yourself, less good about your relationship, get less good about your body image, less confident, like, but you continue to watch it because everyone is promising you the answer. And so this leads to doom scrolling, and it happens in every single niche in every single area. Um, it's really powerful, the effect that this has on you. Like, you cannot underestimate the power that this has on your mental health. Please.
I agree. It's like social media can either be a weapon or a tool. It just depends on how you view it and how you use it.
Mm,
Because some people, let's say, could have watched the Social Dilemma documentary on Netflix, where it quote unquote exposed the concepts of social media and how it's run by psychologists that are trying to get in your mind and control your time. Some people are aware of that, yet they choose to do nothing of it. So it's learning to take responsibility for your digital footprint, not for the sake of people trying to not only, for example, the fear monger of like taking your data, well, it's
hmm.
also taking that space in your head. Like kind of the saying, it lives in my brain rent free. Well, so does all those other fear mongering videos that you consume. So learn to declutter your digital space. And that is a
Yeah.
great way to put it because it's also cleanses you mentally and emotionally to take that step back and ask, my digital space is a reflection of me. Just like how your bedroom is a reflection of how cluttered your mind is or your workspace, apply that to social media and, like you said, regularly check in with yourself. It's so amazing to see how check ins, both in relationships and on social media, can play a massive effect to your mental health.
It's this is a yeah, it's great. And I think, like you said though, there's a lot of really amazing positives. You're really into what technology can do. I'd love for you to talk more about this, some of the things that you're seeing or some of the things that you're excited about. I don't think we should underestimate the positives that there are. Like, I've met all of, sorry, not all, but most of the most amazing people I've met have been through the internet. So let's let's also like give a shout out to that.
Yes.
Asia and I know each other through a website and an app called Wattpad. And so, quick story time, this is how we met, as we were both writers and authors on this platform. Um, and Asia was an influencer. In fact, so was I for a little while, although I then went and worked for the company, which made me less of an influencer because I was not writing as much on company time. I was having to do more work. But communities, social communities are an amazing way to meet other people. I've made brilliant friends, and really just learnt so much as well. Like, I've learnt so much through creating the content that I want, finding people that inspire me and drive me to be better, and also finding people that just like get me. And I've spoken about them already, but I have like such great relationship advice mentors who are massive famous people like Esther Perel, the Gottmans, all of these guys who I listen to regularly, who mentor me regularly, and they don't know who I am, obviously, but their work helps inform me, and it helps inform the Couply team, and it helps bring like really top tier relationship principles to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And just like what you're doing with your social channels, you're leveraging it and using it to create this amazing community. Um,
Mhm. I'm so glad you talked about that because you are absolutely correct. Where people always see the negative of social media, when in
Mm.
reality, it's really deepened the quality of community spaces online where people can feel safe because they can share their thoughts without judgment with someone who they can relate to. And unfortunately, they may not have someone in person physically that they can relate to. So it's actually a safe outlet for many folk to process their thoughts, to connect with others. I know there's many partners, friends I've made, like even the Bumble BFF app, which is very handy for anyone solo traveling or wanting to make new friends but struggle with just going up to someone at a coffee shop. You make such an excellent point where it is a way to foster relationships and deepen them in a way where both parties feel even more seen, heard, and understood. And it's funny because a lot of people say social media is the reason why we all feel so lonely, when in reality, it can also be used in a way to feel less alone and to
Mhm.
actually better understand yourself through, instead of solitude, but through community.
People do feel more lonely than the past, but most people do not reach out to other people that they vibe with uh, on social media. And I do. Maybe it's just me, but if I'm really loving what you're putting out, you are getting a DM, and I'll just reach out to people. And like so, some of the best things in my life have happened because of that. Like when I was an aspiring writer, I was on Wattpad, and I was writing in fantasy, and there was this guy that was number one. He was absolutely killing it, right? We're both like, our book is up there. Just couldn't beat him. He was always number one, and then eventually, when he finished his book, I finally got to the number one on the fantasy charts on Wattpad. But this guy, his name was Taran Matharu, and I DM'd him, was just like, dude, loving your work. You're kicking my ass. I can't seem to like knock you off this one there's number one pedestal. But he hit me back. He's like, I can see you creeping up on me, man. Like, I'm done my book soon. I'm sure it'll be your time. Anyway, we are friends, and he ended up becoming a New York Times bestselling author. Three of his books, or four of his books, became New York Times bestselling authors, and then he started a publishing house. And then he gave me a shout and was like, "Mate, I'd love for you to write a book for this publishing house." And that's how I became a published author. Was all through reaching out to people who are in a similar niche to me online. And it's exactly the same as in the relationship space, doing the same thing. And I'm sure you are in your space as well. Sex tech. This is something you're interested in, right, Asia? Are you doing some stuff around here? I'd love to hear a bit more there.
I am. And funny enough, even talking about sex tech, I was recently in Amsterdam. And just like you, I was like, I'm just going to DM a bunch of people in the sex tech space because I, at the time, was like, I kind of know from a user perspective, but I thought to
Mm.
myself, there's a lot I don't know from the entrepreneurial side of sex tech. So I went onto Instagram, used those hashtags, and just looked up sex tech. All right, load of people look like they're key leaders in this space. I'm gonna just mass DM everybody, and whoever gets back to me, we'll go for a coffee date. And again, that is another testament to the power of just reaching out online and manifesting that online connection into an in person connection, which leads us to the power of sex tech. So I find technology in sexual wellness, intimate wellness, allows us to engage more senses than just sight. So, for example, something I found recently that's been around for a few years now is even audio erotica. And Tim, you and I coming from Wattpad, which is known to be more of a reading site, this idea that now you can listen to the stories, whether it is erotica or it is just your actual author reading out loud the story, is incredible because you're more into the story, and from a intimate perspective, this could help people be more aroused. And something that's fantastic about this is that it makes exploring your pleasure more accessible. And that is why I love the sex tech space so much, is that it's people being innovative and creative to make it more comfortable for people to explore their sexuality, their bodies, their desires. So, for example, TryQuinn is a female founded erotica app, and they have folk from different types of communities, non-binary, black and black people of color, um, read out these stories or write their own, and they're spoken out loud by someone that's recording it, and other people can play it back. So for people that, for example, can't have penetrative intercourse due to conditions like vaginismus or vulvodynia, they can add this to their pleasure practice. And that could even add more heightened arousal. It could help them explore their erogenous zones. It adds more to their experience and breaks down this barrier that sex just has to be penetrative and it just has to be penis and vagina related, which is so limited to only cisgendered heterosexual couples, when in reality, our bodies don't fit in that one box, and our sexuality and desires don't fit all in that one box. Another great way, not even just sex related with the apps, is online platforms where you can talk to sex therapists. That's still sex tech, where you, if you don't feel comfortable going into office, talking about your intimacy, how you feel about it, how you feel with your partner, you can speak to a professional that can help dissect those thoughts with you and come up with a toolbox for you to be better to communicate your feelings. Couply is another example of sex tech,
Yeah.
where it is an app that you can use to help deepen your relationship with your partner and with yourself. It even goes as far as apps for um, alerting people on runs. Let's say if you're going for a run and you're worried of trigger warning of assault, then that's another example of sex tech. Like sex tech is everywhere around us, and it's not just limited to the bedroom. So this idea that people are finally feeling more comfortable talking about their pleasure and discovering their pleasure, technology like apps or like online programs can help people better understand themselves in the safety of their phone, of their mobile device, and overall, the increase of sexual wellness and health can lead to better well being.
Amazing. Asia, what is next for you this year? What have you got coming up?
Well, funny enough, when I told you I mass DM'd a lot of people in the sex tech space, one of them happened to be a sex shop marketplace. And I'm currently in the works of breaking the barrier between vibrators having to be intercourse related and really helping folk that want to do just intercourse, not use penetration as a way of sex, and experience their own pleasure. So I'm creating a hybrid dilator slash sex toy for folk with
Cool.
vaginismus and vulvodynia, and can also be used for those with endometriosis and dysphonia and other vulvovaginal pain conditions, because a lot of time that's what I've noticed a massive gap in the market is that if you can't have penetrative sex, you can't experience pleasure at all. And that is the biggest lie you could ever tell yourself, because you're more than worthy of experiencing that. It's just leaning into that curiosity and seeing what else can my body do. That and my podcast coming up. So again, doing Lord's work like you are, sharing ideas and bringing on people that have inspiring ideas to help people have deeper conversations with themselves and with their partners. So those are two projects in the works right now that I'm very excited for.
Incredible. And where can people find you, learn more about you, get in touch?
The best way to reach me is either through my TikTok, which is where we talk a lot about vaginismus and vulvodynia, break down the myths and treatment options as well, and my Instagram, which is more of a this is what my personal lifestyle looks like as an entrepreneur in the sexual wellness space. So anyone is feel welcome to DM me there or just email me. I will always be in touch.
We will have the links below, but if anyone is listening to this and they're out for a walk, can you drop the at Asia so that they can just type it in on their
Yes.
phone?
It's at AZIA_MERY, and that is across both platforms, Instagram and TikTok.
Amazing. Asia, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do, being so open and vulnerable with our audience. I really appreciate it. I'm excited for your journey, excited to hopefully be able to support you in some small way. and really appreciate you spending this time with me and educating the Couply audience.
Of
Thank you.
course. Thank you so much, Tim, for holding space with me and sending my love to everyone out there who may have related to something in this podcast.